Alrighty, welcome in everyone to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Monday, September 8th, and we got a great week to talk about. It is a week that a lot of people told you was going to be sleepy. There's only one big game. There were a lot of big games and a lot of big-time implications coming out of this weekend, so let's go ahead and jump in. We got big game reactions. We got some upsets to talk about right after, a lot of upsets to talk about, and some close calls. We'll get into winners and losers at the very end of the show, but plenty of stuff to get to, and let's go ahead and start with the big one of the day, the one that really stole the show. It was Oklahoma over Michigan 24-13. This was a game that was the main event going into the weekend. It was the one that everyone would tell you was the only big game going into the weekend. That didn't end up being the case, but this was absolutely one that I think Oklahoma needed a little bit more. I think coming into this football game, you had a lot of different ideas going in, and a lot of it was around Bryce Underwood, a lot of pressure around him. We'll get to him here in a second, but Oklahoma needed this one. If they wanted to find a way to get to the playoff, which is outright their goal, they're going to have to be able to win this game because the schedule they got in front of them is an absolute nightmare. They still have Texas, they still have Missouri, they still have Alabama, they still have a ton LSU, a ton of teams that at some point you're going to get beat. I think that's inevitable for just about every team in the SEC, every team maybe in the Power 4 this upcoming year. But you got Oklahoma, a team that I think can go 9-3 and get into this thing. They probably weren't going to be able to only lose 2 of the last 10 games. Now you got 3 of the last 10 games that you hypothetically can lose, but frankly, I don't know if they're going to. John Mateer looked incredible in this game, was very impressive. A couple of misses, and that's going to be expected. The way that he throws the football, it's going to fly on him a couple of times, and it did on the interception. It did on a couple of different plays. It is not going to be the end of the world. He is a gunslinger. He is going to make mistakes. He's also going to make a lot of really great plays. He made some incredible plays with his legs. We'll talk about the run game and how they might want to get a little bit more out of their running backs here in a second, but this kid is going to give you a chance to win just about every game, especially with that defense on the other side of the field. He is going to make enough plays for you to win just about every game on your schedule. That game against Texas in a couple of weeks is going to be massive. He's going to be under a microscope. He brings a little bit of that juice to that offense, kind of like a Baker Mayfield did a couple of years ago. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to be Baker Mayfield, just saying he brings a certain confidence, a certain swagger to the position that they're going to need over there in Oklahoma this year, mainly because I think a couple of other parts of their offense are shaky, let's say. He accounted for 344 yards of Oklahoma's 408 total yards. Obviously, the passing yards are going to be his. He was the leading rusher on this team. Not necessarily a huge issue. He has the ability to do that. He is going to do that in every big game. You are not going to be able to stop this kid from running and making plays with his legs. That's what he does. But if you're going to be nitpicky, and you probably should be if you want to make a playoff and you're Oklahoma, you got to find a little bit more from the running backs. You got to find a little bit more from this offensive line. They played much better than they did in week 1, and I thought did a really good job. Thought Ben Arbuckle did a great job kind of helping them out with this game plan. But you have to find a way to get a little bit more out of your running backs. You have to find a way to take a little bit off John Mateer's shoulders in these bigger games, or it could cause a couple of problems. Now, he looks fine. He looks incredible. He looked incredible on Saturday. I expect him to keep making those plays. It's a nitpicky thing, and I totally understand that. But I do think it is something that could hurt Oklahoma down the stretch. He got away with a couple of throws on Saturday that you might not get away with going forward. All of this is, getting into the weeds, but if you're Oklahoma, you want to make a CFP, and that's probably what you need to do, is get in the weeds and fix those couple of things. So, incredible win by Oklahoma, one they absolutely needed and one that puts them in a great position. Moving forward, as of right now, I would have them in my playoff. If I was to predict it today, didn't have it going in, so can't do that now. But at the end of the day, incredible performance from Oklahoma, one they absolutely needed. On the other hand, Bryce Underwood is the talk here. There's no question about that. That was going to be the case one way or the other. Either it was going to be Bryce Underwood's the best thing that's happened to college football in forever, or it was going to be what it is right now, which is Bryce Underwood ready for this moment? Is he even a 5-star? Is he worth the money that they put in? Yes, he is totally fine. He's going to be totally fine. They obviously called the game to, I don't want to say protect him, but keep him out of harm's way in a lot of respects, and that makes sense. It is a freshman going on the road to Oklahoma against one of the best defensive minds in the entirety of football, not even college football, but all of football with Brent Venables. You have to be careful, and the worst thing you can do is throw this guy to the wolves. He makes tons of mistakes. They throw 3 picks, they lose by 30, and then you don't have a quarterback with confidence going forward. It was about keeping the confidence up for this kid, and I thought they did that. Now, he went 9 for 24, not remotely what you wanted out of this kid, but he is going to be okay. They got to get new wide receivers in that room in the offseason. That is going to be the biggest thing for this this Michigan football team. They got to get guys in the at the wide receiver positions. They got to approach it like Penn State approached this offseason when they get to the upcoming offseason. Obviously, you got a lot of football to play before then. Bryce Underwood's going to play really good football sometimes. They're going to go on the road. He's not going to play as good of football. That is what a freshman is. The talent level is out of this world. He is going to be a player that will get you into national title conversations, I believe, as early as next year if you turn the right keys in the offseason. So Michigan's going to be fine. I didn't think they were going to be a world beater this year. I didn't think Bryce Underwood was going to hit the ground running, especially against this Oklahoma defense. It was never going to be all that pretty. I don't think Michigan wanted it to be all that pretty. I think they thought they were going to be able to run the ball and play a little bit better defense and put themselves in a position to win without Bryce Underwood having to go out there and be Superman. So everyone freaking out about Bryce Underwood, I wouldn't. I think he's going to be totally fine. I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country starting next year and moving forward the rest of his career. He is going to help you win football games, but came away really impressed with Oklahoma. I think there is a lot going into this season. I think Ben Arbuckle has done an incredible job in the short term with this offense, really schemed up some incredible things. That defense is going to be scary. There's no two ways about that. And they're going to have the ability to get to the CFP this year if they can just tweak a couple of things, get a little bit stronger on the offensive line, get a little bit more of a comprehensive run game with the running backs. They are going to be a really dangerous team, and frankly, they're going to be on their way to the CFP. A lot of hurdles to get over. You won one big game here, you probably got to get about 4 or 5 more if you're going to find your way into the CFP, but they have all the ability to do that. Iowa State wins a game over Iowa. That was kind of what you expected from this game. Now, I thought Iowa State was going to be able to create a little bit more of a margin, but it was about as ugly as the Cyhawk series has been over the last couple of years, but Iowa State wins back-to-back games for the first time since 2010, 2011, wins at home for the first time since 2011. A massive game for Iowa State, one that you were never going to win this one pretty. That's the reality of playing Iowa, is every single game is going to be a little bit gross unless you're an Ohio State or a Oregon that has all the ability to just run around them, make their defense totally obsolete. That wasn't the case for Iowa State coming into this game, and they played incredible football to keep themselves at least a leg up the entire way. The play of the day was Jeremiah Cooper's INT because it puts you in a position to go up 10 right before half. Iowa comes back down, scores a touchdown, and they're not leading. They're not putting you away. They're not putting themselves in a lead going into halftime. They're still down by 3, and Iowa State kind of kept it that way. An incredible drive at the end, 13 plays, 55 yards, a couple of massive throws from Rocco Becht where he had a little bit of an up and down day, sometimes a little bit quiet, but when it mattered, he makes the plays that this Iowa State team needs. It is going to be huge for them in the Big 12 as they move forward. On the Iowa side, the offense just makes me sad, and I really don't know what else to say. Mark Gronowski, he's a good quarterback. It is not a good system. That's the reality of the situation. They had 214 total yards, 3.4 yards per rush, 83 passing yards on the day. It was bad, and I don't think it's going to get all that much better. Reese Vanderzee is going to come back at some point. You will get a boost then. It's not going to be pretty until then, and frankly, it's probably not going to be pretty after that. It is not going to be a great offensive team. It hasn't been for quite some time, and I don't really know what you do to change it other than a change of regime. And you don't want to do that too early. Obviously, they still have a ton of season to play. Obviously, they are going to get better. They're going to play better football. But it is getting rough over there, and I think some fans are getting a little bit restless with how this thing is going. We will see how this develops. A lot of things to go for Iowa. For Iowa State, a very real team. Absolutely a team that can find their way to the Big 12 title once again, win that thing, get into the CFP this year. They go to Arkansas State this weekend. I don't know why they're going to Arkansas State. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Stop going on the road to G5 teams or even below teams. Just don't do that. Really bad idea. But then they get into Big 12 play. It's Arizona, it's at Cincinnati, it's at Colorado. You can win all 3 of those games. And then you're looking at a 7-0 team that is moving forward and has the ability to go undefeated. I believe they get Arizona State. I believe they get Utah. So they have tough games. It's not to say that they're absolutely going to go undefeated. Frankly, I would bet on them not going undefeated. You've put yourself in a position where you play these next 4 games, you go undefeated in those, you have as much slack as any other Big 12 team. And frankly, with the chaos that I think is going to happen in the Big 12, that could be plenty for Iowa State to find their way to win this thing. They have incredible special teams. They have a quarterback that's going to make plays when they need it, and they're going to have one of the most stingy defenses in the entirety of the Big 12. This is a very good football team that absolutely will have something to say about the CFP this year. Moving forward to an SEC matchup this last weekend, Ole Miss gets a win on the road at Kentucky 30-23. They were able to escape, and frankly, I was dumb to think that they were going to escape with anything better than a 7-point win, because that's what Kroger Field is. When you go up to Lexington, you are not going to play your best football. That's what happened with Ole Miss today. Austin Simmons made enough throws in this game, but it was very obviously his first road start. It was a young guy that made a number of mistakes against a defense that is going to take advantage of those mistakes. That being said, he had 2 interceptions. Kewan Lacey in the backfield is a huge player for this team. Went for 138 and carried the rock 28 times. That's what they're going to need. And I think when they were talking about this on the broadcast, that is where this team has gotten immensely better. The run game is totally different than it was a year ago. If they had this run game with last year's quarterback, last year's experience, that's a playoff team. There's no question about that. They're going to have to help out Austin Simmons the rest of the way. They get Arkansas this weekend. They get Tulane right after that, and then LSU. You got to go 2-1. You got to find a way to go 2-1. Only have one loss moving forward into the SEC, because you're probably going to take another one. And obviously, Austin Simmons is going to continue to improve. I still think the talent is out of this world. I still think he has all the ability to be an elite player in this offense. You're probably going to need to meet him halfway, at least over the next 3 weeks. Find a way to go 2-1. If you win the next 2, then it's all on the line against LSU. And if you go 3-0, then you are fully off to the races. You might have knocked LSU out of the CFP conversation. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the show, but this is absolutely a team that can do some special things. The defense, although not perfect, played really good in this one. I think there were a number of big-time plays. They didn't score, Kentucky didn't, without a turnover in the first half, so it wasn't like they were marching down the field. They were getting short fields, and they were taking advantage of that, as you would expect a Mark Stoops team to do. So I think you're in a position for Ole Miss where it's not going to be perfect. It is going to be growing pains with Austin Simmons. It's going to be growing pains with a lot of new players on defense. This is obviously not the best team you're going to play, especially offensively. You're going to have to tighten the screws, but you have all the pieces in place, and you have a run game that is going to help you just have a higher floor, not expect as much from Austin Simmons week in and week out. If you can find a way to win the next 2 games, walk into the LSU game undefeated, you're in a really good position, and you move forward with every chance to get to the CFP. Obviously, some concerns around Austin Simmons, and I can't promise that everything's going to be worked out, but you're in a good position moving forward. For Kentucky, you get a layup against Eastern Michigan this upcoming weekend, but then at South Carolina, at Georgia, Texas comes to town, Tennessee, at Auburn. It's not going to get easier. It's not going to get better. And I think it's going to be a very tough year for Mark Stoops. I think they're going to win a game or 2 here and there, because that's just kind of what Mark Stoops does. They find a way to win one of those games where you have Texas or Tennessee coming to town. Those are interesting games. There's no doubt about that. But it's not going to be all that pretty for Kentucky this season. I don't think anyone really expected it to be this season. This was an opening to win a big-time game, and they left it on the table. And I think that's more than fine, really, in the grand scheme of things. But they're going to have to find a way to get a couple this year, or it's probably going to be the end of the Mark Stoops era around there. For Ole Miss, a relative mystery to me. If Austin Simmons can get a ton better, if he can find a couple of grooves in games, they can win big games. They can get to the Georgia game with maybe only 1 loss, maybe undefeated coming off an LSU win. You're in great shape. You have Georgia at Oklahoma, South Carolina at home. You have every ability to make this thing very interesting. You're going to need more out of Austin Simmons. I don't think that can really be argued, but I tend to believe you're going to get more, and if that run game continues to produce the way it did on Saturday, you're going to have a lot of ability to, at the very least, be in games late. Missouri gets a big-time win over Kansas, a 42-31 win. This was a battle, and it was a really fun offensive battle in so many different ways. Bo Parabola goes for 334 through the air, makes all the plays with his arms. Did not need his legs in this game because both Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy went for over 100 yards. That is a running back duo that is going to give them all the ability in the world. This was a Missouri offense that I don't want to say I was down on, but I was skeptical of. Coming into the season, I wasn't sure Bo Parabola was going to be able to throw the ball at the level they needed. I thought the offensive line was going to be good. They really pushed around Kansas, and frankly, In some ways, they should, right? The size advantage, the talent advantage that Missouri did have in this game was obvious. There's no doubt about that. But you're putting yourself in a position where if you find a way to beat South Carolina at home in 2 weeks, I can't remember who they get in between, but it's a relative layup. You get South Carolina at home. If you win that game, you're 5-0 going into the Bama game. And you're in a position where you're probably on the fast track to the CFP. If you look at that schedule, it is very manageable. You have every ability to make some big-time plays, especially when you have Bo Pribla. You have the running back duo that you have. You have Kevin Coleman on the outside. They have the pieces. There's no doubt about that. Got to fix up some things defensively. There's no doubt about that, and definitely some things that a team like South Carolina and Lenora Sellers can take advantage of. There's no doubt. But you have all the ability to make a run, to go 10-2, to get into the CFP. I think you have to go 10-2. I think that should be said here. You have to find a way to go 10-2, but I think they're in a position where they're going to do some really, really special things and be able to find their way into the CFP. But overall, this is a very, very tough team. They went 10 plays, 75 yards at the very end of, towards the end of the game, I should say, going up 31-28. It was a very, very impressive drive, and it was pretty much all on the shoulders of Bo Pribla. There's only one run for 3 yards on that drive. They made massive plays, and then Brett Norfleet eventually gets the touchdown, and then Jamal Roberts puts it on ice with a massive run down the sideline. This is a very, very good football team. They put themselves in a great position moving forward. For Kansas, it doesn't kill you by any means. You have West Virginia, Cincinnati, at UCF, and at Texas Tech coming up. You find a way to go 3-1, you're still firmly in the mix in the Big 12. If you go 4-0, you're almost very much in the mix. And I frankly think you're probably one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the Big 12 at that point. You got dominated on the line of scrimmage, and that's to be expected. Like we talked about earlier, only ran for 28 yards on 9 traditional carries. It wasn't pretty by any means. You're in a position where you got to play better. You got to turn over a couple of stones, but you have about 3 of the more advantageous Big 12 opponents with West Virginia, Cincinnati, and then at UCF you could have over the next couple of weeks to figure that out. This is going to be a good team. There's no doubt about that. For Missouri, you're firmly in the mix for a CFP moving forward. If you can put together a couple of things offensively, well, frankly, offensively you might be fine. If you can put together a couple of things defensively, you're going to be able to beat a number of teams on your schedule. You win that South Carolina game, it is off to the races for the Tigers. If you lose, you're walking a little bit of a tightrope with Alabama, Oklahoma, and a couple other tough games down the stretch. But it was an incredible weekend. A lot of big-time games. Obviously, the Michigan-Oklahoma one take a lot of the headlines and very well should. John Mateer puts on a show, probably vaults himself up to, I believe, top 3 in the Heisman conversation, if I'm not mistaken. A very good performance from him. But now we got to talk about the main events, at least in my opinion. The upsets that happened this past weekend, or almost happened this past weekend, we got to talk about them all right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the big games from this past weekend. Obviously, Michigan-Oklahoma kind of takes the cake there. But we got upsets to talk about, and it was one of those weekends where we talked about it going into the weekend. People were going to tell you this was a sleepy Saturday. They were going to tell you that Michigan-Oklahoma was the only big game on TV. There were going to be upsets, and I promised you that on Friday, and you got that on Saturday. It was an incredible, incredible weekend. And South Florida won the weekend more than just about anyone else. We'll talk about the next team that might have won the weekend just a little bit more here in a second. But this was the shock of the bunch. This is the one that not a lot of people saw coming. I picked this game and said it absolutely can be close, but I picked Florida by about 17 points. So I expected Florida to win this game pretty comfortably at the end of the day. And frankly, I expected that really until South Florida made that massive play down the field to Keyshawn Singleton. That was when it really opened up. And then you had the final drive. What are we doing? The spitting thing. You saw what happened. You saw what Jalen Carter did. You saw how he got kicked out of the game. You saw that the Eagles' defense was immensely worse because of it. What is Brandon Bett doing in that moment? You have such an ability to just keep your cool, put yourself in a position to win that game, and just gang tackle. At the end of that game, they don't. He walks off the field the next play. Alvin Isaac goes about 40 yards down the sideline and puts them in a position to win that game. Then it was just about sitting on the ball. And frankly, they were able to sit on the ball because Billy Napier did not call a timeout when he very well should have towards the end of that game. I understand a lot of this from the Florida perspective, and it's not my place to call out play callers, not my place to call out coaches in general. But just to say, Jaden Ball had 18 carries for 93 yards. He was the only good offense you had for the vast majority of this football game. How does he not get a 19th? What did he do on the first 18 carries that made you think a 19th wasn't worth it, or a 20th, or 25, or 30? You're in a position, you're in a game where you can't put you don't want to put anything more at danger than you have to. You don't want to put anything more on tape than you have to. And you have a quarterback in DJ Lagway that is immensely talented, can do some really incredible things with the football. He's also been hurt a lot. He's also hasn't practiced quite as much as you would want your starting quarterback to practice, going all the way back to last year, and it showed up in this football game. He missed guys that he probably should have hit. He didn't look fully comfortable with his mechanics. He was in a position where you put a little bit too much on this guy's shoulders, and you really shouldn't have to say that for a South Florida game. You really should be able to put whatever you need to on DJ Lagway's shoulders and him continue to make plays. But the reality of the matter is, when you are running the ball that effectively with a running back like Jaden Ball, and Jacoby Jackson was not necessarily as explosive or making massive plays, but was moving the ball downfield pretty effectively, why are we taking our foot off the gas? Why are we taking our foot off our opponent's necks in some respects? You have the ability to run the football on this team, and you just didn't. You kept pushing the ball downfield, which is essentially their passing offense in general, but you kept pushing the ball downfield, you kept putting the ball in dangerous positions, and you got nothing going offensively. There was no groove, there was no ability to really put together a great long-term drive because you didn't commit to the one thing that you did really well. It was bad, pretty much from start to finish. For Florida, on the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, you played better, but you missed the critical moments that you had to make down the stretch in, made some really terrible decisions outside of the football or on the football field, but outside of the game of play at the very least. Florida lost this game. South Florida did a great job. It's not to take anything out of South Florida. It's not to say that they aren't a CFP team moving forward. We'll talk about that here in a second. It's bad. And Florida played really poorly in this game. They did not do the things that they were supposed to do. I don't know why they didn't come in with a game plan saying, number 13 is going to give us a win. Let's just hand him the ball and let him do his thing, especially with the worries that we have at quarterback. I don't get it. I don't get much of any of it. I don't get the clock management at the end of the game. It made Deion Sanders look like he knows exactly what he's doing with clock management. It was bad. It was really, really bad. And it's one of those things that you tried your hardest to keep everything moving, to say that Billy Napier was going to figure it out, to say that this regime was going to figure it out. I think you're past that. I think you're in a position where you're staring down a schedule that is as nightmarish as anyone in the entire country. You still have Texas. You still have Georgia. You still have LSU. Next week you have LSU. The week after that you have Miami. It is not going to get easier. You're in a position where, frankly, I was looking at the schedule. If you get to a bowl game, you played really good football the rest of the way. You played really hard, you played really intense, and Billy Napier's probably still on the sideline. There's a world where he doesn't get to the Texas game in 4 weeks, I guess, with the bye week in between. I don't like saying that. It is not something I enjoy talking about whenever any coach gets fired, but that's the reality of the situation. You knew what it was coming into this season, and you misplayed this game. You really did. And you're playing a South Florida team that was not going to allow you to get away with much. This is a very well-coached team. This is a team that knows exactly who they are, and they stick to it every single week. And now they go on the road to Miami next weekend. I don't think they have to win that game. If they find a way to win that game, they're running away with the group of 5 position. They are already kind of running away with the group of 5 position. 2 top 25 wins in back-to-back weeks, Boise State and now Florida. You're in a position where you can do some really incredible things. Still have Memphis on the road, still have Navy on the road. Work still to be done for this South Florida team. But you put yourself in a position where you can lose to Miami. I don't really care what the score is. Let's try to keep it at least relatively fair. But at the end of the day, I think you're in a position where you are far and away the group of 5 team. We'll talk about Tulane a little bit later. They can still absolutely catch you. But you're in a position, if you're South Florida, you called an incredible game. You played your football. You didn't play perfect by any means, but team on the other side didn't play remotely perfect. So you find a way to win this one, a huge one for South Florida. The Gramatica kid hits another big kick that's just a thing for that family. But at the end of the day, a massive, massive win for South Florida. If I was to pick one team to make the CFP right this second, it would be South Florida. There's no question they are far and away the team in the group of 5 that has the inside track. They just got to keep the inside track, and that is a relatively tough thing to do, but we'll see what happens for Florida. strap in, because I don't think it's going to get a lot easier. I don't know if it's going to get a lot better, and we'll figure that out over the next couple of weeks. If they win on the road at LSU, then maybe it's all back on track, but we'll tackle that probably on Wednesday. We'll get into that game. But the other big time one, Mississippi State wins a big one, 24-20 over Arizona State at home. You made it out of the wilderness. Mississippi State fans absolutely deserve this. It was a tough time last year, and 2-10 is never going to be easy. It was really tough how it unfolded. The last couple of years for Mississippi State, it has not been the way that they wanted it to. It was not the way that they had planned it about 4 years ago. But you found your way out of the wilderness. You found your way to a coach that I think is incredible, that I think is going to do great things for this team. And you hit some big plays in this game. You hit about, I think, 3 touchdowns, over 40 yards in this one. Blake Shapen continues to be a guy that I don't think we talk about enough. And I think the injuries have a ton to do with that. Makes total sense. Not necessarily talking crap on anyone that's not talking about Blake Shapen enough. This kid knows what he's doing, and he's very, very comfortable in this offense. He knows that he has guys that can make plays downfield, and he stands in there like no other. He was in a position in that last play where there was a chance there was going to come a free rusher. He slipped just a little bit, which gave him a little bit more time, but Blake Shapen knew that guy was coming, and he found a way to get that ball out, played some really incredible football. On the other side of the ball, Sam Leavitt threw for 83 yards in this game. It was not pretty, and I think they were in a position where going into this season as a whole, especially going into this game, you were thinking if you put the ball in Sam Leavitt's hands, that's fine. We feel confident in that guy to go make plays, to do what he needs to do. The reality was the only reason you were in this game late was because you were able to run the ball. Relief Brown and Connie Udo both go for over 100 yards. They essentially death march Mississippi State at the end of the game to take the lead and possibly win this one. And then Mississippi State comes back down the field, makes a massive play to Brenen Thompson, and that was about it. But you're in a position, if you're Arizona State, where you just need more from your quarterback. And this is not to take anything away from Mississippi State. They played an incredible game. That defensive line is nasty. The outside guys played incredible on Jordan Tyson. But you're in a position where you got to get more from your guy. You have to find a way to get a little bit more, because you're in a position now where everyone's going to sell out to stop the run. Everyone's going to find a way to double Jordan Tyson and stop the run and just say, make someone else beat us. Make some other wide receiver, make Sam Leavitt beat us with his arm, with elite placement, and he hasn't been able to do it. It's not to say that he won't do it. I think he's a great player. I think he will continue to develop. But this was very obviously a game that they were just a little bit outmatched, especially on the offensive line. They really struggled in a lot of different respects. I think they're going to be okay. They're still firmly in the mix for the Big 12. Obviously, they will be fine moving forward. They got to find a little bit more offensively. In the pass game, they got to find a little bit more. They can't just rely on this running back crew to go for over 100 yards to keep them in games. They got to be a little bit better. They got to be a little bit stronger. They will be fine. Not super worried about Arizona State, but absolutely a game where some of the worries you had coming into the season were exposed a little bit more. Now, the run game was a little bit more of a worry than I guess it should have been, but then you have to be able to be complimentary. So it's a little bit of a back and forth. We will figure out more about this Arizona State team moving forward. For Mississippi State, you had to win this one for a lot of different reasons, but mainly because if you didn't, you probably weren't making a bowl game. I think now you have a chance to make a bowl game. I don't think it's a layup by any means, but you go 2-0 before SEC play. You're in a position where it's a gauntlet. There's no two ways about that. It is going to be really, really tough. It is going to be a game or a schedule where you're going to have to bring your A game just about every single week. They have the ability to knock off some teams. I said it coming into this year. They have too much talent on that team to not win a couple of these big games. They've won one, and I think they're probably going to get another. Whatever that looks like, whoever team that is, I don't know. But this is a team that needed this. It is really hard to go 2-10 and have your team ready to run through a wall again in August and early September. Jeff Lebby has that. He's done an incredible job with this team. He's put this team in a really good position, both from a just talent perspective and a schematic perspective. They've done an incredible job, and they deserve all the respect in the world. Mississippi State, you found your way out of the wilderness. It was a tough couple of years, but you've got a huge win. Now you just got to hope you string a couple of together, find a way to a bowl game, and then continue to build off this success. A couple of close calls from this past weekend. Clemson wins a game 27-16 over Troy that they were down 16-0 at half, or 16-3 at half, I believe. It was bad. It was really, really bad through half of this game. Frankly, I thought it was going to be bad through the entirety of this game. I thought Troy was going to win this game at halftime, and then a matter of 4 plays. Clemson scores twice, does not give the lead back, and That was about it. They went up 17-16, and that was all she wrote. It was not great. For a lot of this game for Clemson, they had, outside of Adam Randall, who went for over 100 yards, played a great game, they had 10 carries for 8 yards. They have to find a way to get a little bit more. It can't all be Adam Randall because he's a new running back. He is new to the position. He just moved over from wide receiver. You cannot put all of that on his shoulders. Outside of that, you got to get more from Cade Klubnik. And I don't know what the problem with this offense is. I don't know if they're going to totally fix it up, totally play clean throughout the rest of the way, but I know they have to on Saturday. They play a Georgia Tech team that will take advantage of just about every opening that you give them. You gave Troy quite a bit of openings in this game. Haynes King's going to be able to score on a lot of those openings, not just miss a chance or not just hit a field goal instead of get a touchdown. It is going to be really, really tough. I can promise you that. It is going to be really tough to find a way out of Atlanta with a win if you're going to play that level of football, and you can't go 1-2. You can't be behind the 8 ball in the ACC because you've seen what Florida State is. You've seen what Miami is. You got to be careful. And I think Clemson put in the performance that at the very least is behind you, and at the very least you went 1-0 this week, so you can take some pride in that. It was not pretty, and this offense has a lot to figure out. The defense, I think, is going to be okay. They missed a couple of moments in this game, no doubt about that, but I think the defense is going to be okay. The offense has got to do more. There's no doubt about that. You can't just hope that your defense gets 2 picks early so you can get some momentum and make some big plays. You have to find a way to be more consistent. You have to find a way to get more from the run game than just Adam Randall. They will figure it out. I have no doubts about that. If they don't figure it out by Saturday, they could be looking at 1-2 in the face. Syracuse escapes in overtime over UConn. I told you UConn was going to impress this upcoming weekend. I think they did that. Now, they didn't pull off the special thing here. I thought they were going to, frankly. It was very, very close late in this one. Syracuse able to find 2 touchdowns late in this one with about 30 seconds left, forced this thing to overtime. An incredible drive from UConn to actually force overtime, but incredible job from this UConn team. I think overall, you're in a hole when you talk about the group of 5 getting into the playoff. That was going to be the case. It was probably going to be pretty hard for UConn to pull it off unless they went undefeated, if I'm being totally honest. That being said, they do have a game against Boston College coming up. They do have Duke at home later in the year. They have the ability to get a couple of marquee wins. They're probably going to need some help from some of those other group of 5 teams that we've talked about earlier in the show, but they have the ability to make something special happen regardless of if you lose the Boston College game, lose the Duke game. If they go 9-3, UConn put together an incredible season, and they move forward with Jim Mora, hopefully with Jim Mora, and have a lot of confidence as they move forward. So, a really good job from UConn. The story of this game, weirdly enough, was after the game. It was the sprints that Fran Brown had his team run in the Carrier Dome. I didn't like it. I'll be totally honest. I think I'm joining kind of everyone in this respect. I didn't like it at all, if I'm being totally honest. If the players didn't execute, I would argue the coaches didn't execute all that well either, and they should probably be on the line running sprints with them. To each their own. I like Fran Brown. He's done an incredible job with that program, so I'm not going to turn my nose up too much at it. Just didn't love it. Not my ideal way to go about business, not the way that I probably would have gone about it, but then again, I'm not a head coach in college football, so I'll let Fran Brown do his thing. Just didn't love that. Syracuse finds a way to win. They won they very badly needed. This Syracuse team looks very questionable at the very least. We'll see what happens with them going forward, but I don't think it's going to be the team from last year. Army gets a win over Kansas. A couple other upsets here to finish this thing out. I don't know what Kansas State is. I have no earthly idea. I don't know what happens when you lose a game over in Ireland, but it might just torpedo your season. Whoever TCU or North Carolina, whoever loses that game early next year, you might just want to put in one for their win total under. But at the end of the day, Kansas State loses another game. They fall to 1-2 on their schedule after barely eking out a win over North Dakota in week 1 after week 0's performance. It was bad. It was really, really bad for Kansas State. I don't know if it's going to get all that better. The Big 12 is not going to be very kind to this team if they continue to make mistakes offensively like they have. It's not going to be pretty. And this was a backup quarterback for Army with Cade Helms. Made a number of big-time plays, so incredible job from them. Had 2 13-plus play drives that they found a way to cash in for touchdowns. Went for 70 carries for 237 yards the week after they lost to FCS Tarleton State. It was bad. In Kansas State, you're in a very bad position moving forward. I don't know what to make of this season. I thought this was going to be a ton better team. So I don't know what to do with that. What I can say is if I was a head coach right now, I would not be excited for an Ireland game. for whatever reason, it does not work out very well for whichever team loses that. It was Florida State last year. Now it's Kansas State. Hopefully they do a little bit better than 2-10, but you can make the argument they should be 0-3 right now. They are 1-2, but it's a rough team. I'll just leave it at that. For Army, a massive win after a very disappointing loss last week, and you move forward with at least a little bit of confidence in a very tough conference, however. Ohio gets a 7-point win over West Virginia. Don't say I didn't tell you. Could have bet on it. Said that Ohio was going to win. Parker Navarro is a very interesting player. He threw 3 picks in this game, did not get punished for any of them because West Virginia did not get a first down in any of the 3 picks that he threw. This is a very fun quarterback. This is a guy that can make all types of plays. He is going to hurt you with his legs in every single facet. He is a very, very talented player, and he puts this team in a really good position to win football games. The defense probably played a little bit better in this game. They totally shut down the run game for West Virginia. If you do that to a Rich Rod offense, you're going to win the football game. That's the reality of that offense, and frankly, I think a lot of people are going to be able to shut down the West Virginia run game. I think Rich Rod is going to be able to figure it out, be able to get on his feet in year 2 and moving forward. I don't think this one's going to be all that pretty. They get Pitt next, then at Kansas, Utah in the next 3. I don't think it's going to get better. I'll leave it at that for the time being. Ohio is probably just the start of a little bit of a skid for West Virginia. Maybe they can turn it around, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. As for Ohio, shock the world in Columbus this weekend. If you find a way to beat Ohio State, a lot of things happen very quickly. You probably won't, with all due respect, but we'll see what happens up there in Columbus. UNLV gets a win over UCLA 30-23, another one that I picked, just saying. If you follow my upset picks, then you're probably in pretty good shape this past weekend. But Tennessee fans had to enjoy this one. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the week, or later in the show, but this one was frustrating. From the UCLA offense, from Nico overall. Nico, once again, was the leading rusher for UCLA. I think that's going to be a theme throughout this year, but it was bad. It was really bad. UNLV jumped out to, I believe, a 30-3 lead, if I'm not mistaken, and then UCLA was able to come back into it, was able to make a couple of plays, and then a pick from Nico finishes off the game. It was bad. And UNLV now puts themselves in a position where they get a win at Boise State later in the season. They have the ability to do something pretty special. Now, I have my worries about this UNLV team. I think the defense continues to have to improve, but they are improving in a lot of different ways. We'll see what the rest of the season holds for this Runnin' Rebels team, but could be a very interesting squad to watch late in the season. There were a lot of upsets. There were a lot of close calls. There were a lot of teams that played a lot better football than they probably expected, and definitely the team on the other side expected. For Florida, I don't know where you go forward from here, if I'm being totally honest. I don't know what happens with Billy Napier. I don't know how quickly anything happens. Find a way to win at LSU, I guess is the answer, and that is a far from easy answer, but I think that's the way you're going to have to go about this. We will obviously talk about that game on Wednesday. We'll get into whatever happens over the next 48 hours down there in Gainesville. I don't think too much, but we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, let's take our second break here. When we come back, we just got to go through a number of other games. Illinois rolls Duke. Baylor is able to win a double overtime thriller against SMU. We had an NC State Virginia out of conference game and a couple other things right after this, so stick with me. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about all the upsets, or at least close upsets, like Clemson-Troy, Syracuse over UConn. It was a weird weekend, and it was to be expected with a lot of people telling you it was a sleepy weekend. That is never the case in college football, but let's get into a little bit of a weekend whip around, a couple of games that I just wanted to touch on here for a second, because there were a lot of really great ones. And we'll go back to Friday night to start off this. Louisville gets a big-time win over JMU 28-14, one that they absolutely needed, and one that did not look like it was in hand until very late when Isaac Brown went 78 yards for a touchdown with about 3.5 minutes left to put the nail in the coffin. But JMU missed a couple of chances early. There were definitely some big-time chances to go up by more than 7-6 going into halftime, to not allow Louisville to get 2 big field goals at the end of the half and put themselves in a really good position. Moving forward, JMU missed a couple of shots. There's no doubt about that. The 2-quarterback system is really fun. There's no doubt about that. They have a lot of different packages they can throw at you. Alonzo Barnett and Matthew Sluka make things really hard for defenses. So I don't think they have to change the approach too much. I just think you were in a position where if you let Louisville hang around, number one was going to make a play. And that's exactly what happened. Isaac Brown was the best player on the field, and he proved that. He was an incredible player and made the biggest play of the day. There's no doubt about that. But if you're Louisville, you needed this one. It was going to be put you in a very bad position going into the ACC, especially with all the relatively new quote-unquote hurdles like Miami, like Florida State, which you knew were going to be tough, but you didn't know were going to be this tough. Now you're in a position where you have to be really good the rest of the way. The run game has to be maybe more consistent, I should say. Not necessarily better. I think they put up overall good numbers, but a little bit more consistent, a little bit more lean on them mentality, and the pass game has to get a little bit better. I think they have the guys. I think Chris Bell is going to be a great player. If you can't get only chunk plays, I guess is the best way to put it. You have to find a way to get those boring 3-4 yard carries that really win you football games. For JMU, you got a couple of tough games coming forward. That being said, you're in a position where you can run the table in the Sun Belt. You can give yourself the ability to win the Sun Belt. We've talked about it earlier. I don't know if the Sun Belt gets a ton of respect. So among the Tulane, USF, JMU, do they stand out enough among those American teams? Do those American teams slip up maybe a couple of times to give JMU a little bit of an opening? That's probably what's going to happen, if I'm being totally honest. I like this JMU team. I think they have the ability to run the table the rest of the way and get a couple of things to break their way, but not the result that you wanted. Definitely one that if JMU was able to win, we're probably talking about them and South Florida being the teams that are defining the G5 race. Now it's pretty much South Florida with just about everyone else trying to vie for number 2. So it is going to be interesting to watch that unfold. I think JMU has all the ability in the world. Got to clean up some things, and for Louisville, you're still firmly in the mix. You got a win that you absolutely needed. Definitely some consistency things offensively that you're going to want to clean up. Illinois got a win 45-19 over Duke. It was 14-13 at halftime. I don't know what happened in this game. If I'm being totally honest, I knew Illinois was up, I believe, 32-19 or 31-19 if I'm not mistaken, and I kind of flipped it off, or at least I turned my attention elsewhere. They outscored Duke 31-6 in the second half, 17-0 in the fourth. It was tough. And frankly, I was talking about it going into this game, that does Illinois have that wide receiver one? Can they get that guy to make a number of plays throughout this game? Hank Beatty made a number of plays. He had over 100 yards. Altmaier had over 303 touchdowns through the air. It was an incredibly good performance from this Illinois football team, and it was a game that I think could have gotten really sketchy. And Darian Mensah on the other side could have made it probably more sketchy than he did, but Illinois did a great job. They totally manhandled that offensive line, made Darian Mensah not comfortable pretty much from the jump, and you were in a position where he missed a couple of balls. Now, the Duke wide receivers dropped a couple of balls that they probably should have caught, but at the end of the day, a huge win for Illinois. They get Indiana in 2 weeks. They got to be able to win that game. If they find a way to win that game, Illinois is firmly in the mix for the CFP. I believe they sit somewhere around 8, I believe, in the new AP poll. So I think you're in a position where you win that game in 2 weeks against Indiana, you are off to the races and firmly in the mix for a CFP. For Duke, I wasn't necessarily buying a ton of Duke stock. The schedule is still in a position where they can make a run in the ACC. Got to get a number of things cleaned up defensively. Baylor gets a win in double overtime over SMU, 48-45. This one was weird. Another one that I don't want to say I wasn't, totally watching. I wasn't paying full attention. I'll be totally honest. 2 scores in the final 5:23 in this game. Sawyer Robertson continues to put on a show. He put up 440 and 4 touchdowns in this game. If you're buying a Heisman ticket right now, would not be the worst thing to throw a little bit of money there because they're needing this kid. I think they ran the ball better in this game. They're probably going to need this kid to make a number of big-time plays, especially because the defense leaves quite a bit to be desired. There's no doubt about that. Tough loss for SMU. The defense has to turn a corner there as well, obviously. You get TCU in 2 weeks, and if they don't turn a corner defensively, they're probably going to do what they did in North Carolina to you. So got to be very careful. Then they still get at Clemson, at Miami. To say I don't think I don't think SMU is going to make the CFP again. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a good team that continues to build under Rhett Lashley, maybe under Rhett Lashley. Something to talk about later in the season, but you got a lot of things to figure out. There's no doubt about that. You're going into a conference schedule that is not quite as kind as it was a year ago. So going to have to clean up some things. We'll see if SMU can do that. For Baylor, you're in a good position. You got to get the defense in order. There's no doubt about that. You have Arizona State at home in 2 weeks. You win that game, and you're firmly in the mix in the Big 12, and you've put yourself in a position where you're probably knocked out Arizona State from the Big 12 conversation, and you put yourself firmly at the top. NC State 35, Virginia 31. This was somehow an out-of-conference game. Very weird set of circumstances with the new conference realignment that knocked this game off the schedule for both them. They wanted to play it. They said they would play it out-of-conference. Very weird, but at the end of the day, was a very, very fun game. It was back and forth pretty much until the fourth when no one could get anything done. Virginia found a way down the field time and time again, but missed a field goal. Had a turnover downs on the NC State 8-yard line, and then had an INT that was thrown into the NC State end zone. It was a tough finish for Virginia. It was a tough finish to this game, and NC State found a way to make the plays when they needed to. It was not all that pretty in a number of ways for these defenses, but I think both these teams are in a very interesting position. I think Virginia's schedule puts them in a place where maybe you get a couple of wins. Maybe you get the ball rolling downhill, and this not being a conference game really comes back to help you towards the end of the season. Maybe NC State finds a way to upset a couple of teams. CJ Bailey puts together another great performance moving forward, and you have a dangerous team up there in Raleigh. So it'll be really interesting to watch these two teams go about business. I don't think they're going to factor too much into the ACC conversation, but neither of them got hurt this weekend, at least in the ACC. Tulane 31, South Alabama 30. Tulane 33, South Alabama 31. This was a weird game. As Tulane falls down 14-0 early in this one, then they outscore South Alabama 33-3 for the vast majority of this game, and then South Alabama finds two scores late. It comes down to a 2-point conversion stop from Tulane to win this one. It was not all that pretty. You found a way to win the game, and I think that makes sense. You had a game last week against Northwestern that you were very excited for. You have a game next week where Darian Mensah, the guy that left you, comes to town. It makes sense that this one was a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a weird performance, a little bit of we're up, 33-17. Let's take our foot off the gas. Let's be able to win this game. Didn't work out that way, all that pretty, but you find a way to win. You got Duke at home, then you have at Ole Miss. You win one of those, you're in a position to meet South Florida, especially if they are pretty much only if they lose to Miami. But you're in a position where you're at least on relative even footing. It is not going to be perfectly even footing. I still think South Florida would have a little bit of an edge above you, but you'd have the ability to beat them later in the season in the American title, and it could just be for a CFP spot. It could just be those two teams going at it, being the top two teams in the Group of 5 conversation. Whoever wins it goes to the CFP. I could very well see that being the case, and Tulane kept themselves alive at the very least this Saturday. Michigan State wins a big one, 42-40 over Boston College. Realize I have the score wrong there, apologies, but it was 42-41, a great quarterback matchup in this one that I knew was underrated going into this weekend, but Dylan Lonergan puts up almost 400 yards, 4 scores through the air. Aiden Childs puts up 231 through the air, 4 scores, and then another one on the ground. It was a special game where Michigan State made just one more play. That was about it. I don't think Boston College is going to make a ton of noise this year. I can promise you they're going to be a team to watch in 2026. They are a dangerous team with a quarterback that fully understands that system, that's very comfortable in it, and can rip the ball around the yard. For Michigan State, it's a tough Big Ten schedule. It was always going to be tough. It's always going to be tough for Michigan State. That's the reality of a lot of the rivalries that they have up there. But it's a fun team. There's no doubt about that. They continue to move forward. They continue to progress. Need to get a little bit more out of that defense moving forward, but absolutely have the ability to maybe shock some people throughout this year. Vanderbilt 44, Virginia Tech 20. What happened in this second half? Vanderbilt outscored them 34-0 in the second half, outgains Virginia Tech by over 300 yards. It was bad. It was abuse of the highest order in the second half of this game. Diego Pavia even threw a lead block on a run. It was wild stuff. But Vandy scored in every single drive in the second half. They're a good football team. They're far from perfect. I don't know why they're not ranked, if I'm being totally honest. It's absolutely crazy what the AP poll is this week, but I'll go ahead and leave that rant to the side for the time being. Vanderbilt has a huge one this weekend against South Carolina. If they find a way to win that one, and they just beat a team at home a little bit worse than South Carolina beat them in a neutral field, if they find a way to win that game, this Vandy team gets really interesting in a hurry. Now, I was talking a little bit down on Vanderbilt into this season. Kind of apologize for doing that, if I'm being totally honest. They are a dangerous team. If they go 5-0, or if they find a way to win that South Carolina game, they probably will be 5-0 going into that Bama game. Gives them the spot to do something really special. I don't necessarily think they will. I'm still very skeptical, but at the end of the day, this is a top 20 team in my mind, at least as of right this second. Virginia Tech is in a really tough spot moving forward. I'll just tell you that right now. The ACC slate is not terrible, but not necessarily easy for them, and they're in a position where you probably couldn't lose these two games. You probably had to go 1-1, you went 0-2, and now you're in a really bad spot moving forward. And then the abuse that happened up in Eugene, Oregon. Oregon 69, Oklahoma State 3. Oregon looks really good, guys, and it's something that I probably should have expected coming into the season. Oklahoma State looks upsettingly bad thus far, if I'm being totally honest. It is incredible what this Oregon team is capable of. It is incredible what Dan Lanning is capable of if you start talking crap to him. Stop. Stop saying things about Dan Lanning, about his program, about his pocketbook before you show up to Eugene. He is going to stomp you into the ground. He's going to smile at you while doing it. It is a very bad idea to attack Dan Lanning. He is going to come out firing. The team said as much at the end of the game. Dante Moore said as much. He said, "You're essentially coming after one of our own. You're coming after our guy. We're going to tear you to pieces." That's exactly what they did. In Oklahoma State, there was nothing to be done in this game, if I'm being totally honest. There were a number of things that hypothetically you could have done, I suppose. It wasn't going to matter. Oregon was going to dominate you in this game, and they did from start to finish. It was ugly. Oregon moves forward at Northwestern this weekend. Oregon State before a Penn State game. They should be undefeated going into that matchup. It should be the game of the week. It should maybe be the game of the year. It'll be incredible to watch what this Oregon team is capable of on the road in a much bigger moment, a much bigger spot. I want to talk about De'Corian Moore here for a second. Incredible player. A guy that will be firmly in the mix for the Biletnikoff over the next 3 years, including this one. He's a special player that they knew they were going to need at the beginning of the season when Evan Stewart went down. He answered the bell. He's been an incredible, incredible player for this football team. He will continue to be so. If I had to imagine for Oklahoma State, I don't know what you do. I think you ride out this season. You see what happens at the end. Probably something that looks a little bit like mutually parting ways. I hate to say it. I think Mike Gundy's done an incredible job over there at Oklahoma State. Probably time to move forward, if I'm being totally honest. We'll see how that unfolds. Obviously, Mike Gundy will be handled very, very carefully there and very fairly there because he's done incredible things for that university, but it might be going out with a whimper, if I'm being totally honest. But overall, a lot of incredible games this past weekend. We also had Toledo get a massive win over Western Kentucky. Needed that one in a big way. But we move forward. We have one more segment here, winners and losers from this past weekend. We'll get into it all. The SEC, despite the Florida win, kind of won this past weekend. The ACC badly lost it. And we'll talk about it all right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about a ton of games. A lot of games that we didn't have a chance to get to in the first couple of segments, and ones that maybe weren't quite as close as a lot of us expected to be, especially that one up there in Eugene was very tough to watch. But let's get some winners and losers from this past weekend. A number of big time things that happened. But let's start with the conferences, as we often do. Obviously, it is a conversation that is going to be had at the end of the season. And the SEC is winning that conversation right about now. The Florida loss did not help. I will not argue that by any means. But the SEC got 2 wins over the Big 12 this past weekend with Mississippi State over Arizona State, Missouri over Kansas. You got a win over the ACC with Vandy going into Virginia Tech and dominating them. And you got a Big 10 win. You got one over Oklahoma over Michigan. No major upsets outside of Gainesville. A couple of ones that were ugly, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But you put yourself in a great position. Moving forward, the Mississippi State game is really the big one. Now, the Oklahoma game means the world. Absolutely gives you a little bit of a leg up on the conference that you're probably going to have the biggest run-in with, I suppose, when it comes to the CFP conversation. That being said, the Mississippi State game is massive. That is likely the 14th or 13th maybe best team in the SEC, beating maybe the 3rd or 2nd best team in the Big 12. That is going to carry a lot of weight. Let's just be totally honest. That is going to be the thing that possibly gets a 9-3 Oklahoma in over an 11-2 Big 12 title loser. You're going to be in a position where you have a lot of margin for error because of that Mississippi State win. Obviously, quite a bit of more work to do. You can't have multiple teams 9-3 and expect to get them both in over an 11-2 team, but it gives you a massive leg up. I'll tell you that. And I think you're in a position where the SEC is going to be having quite a few teams in this thing. There's no doubt about that, but I think they have about 8 true contenders for a playoff spot, maybe even more than that. When you really widen the scope, I think you can go all the way down to maybe Auburn, of a team that absolutely can find their way in. Oklahoma, Missouri really getting firmly into the mix this past weekend. The SEC won this weekend. They're finding a way to win these kind of out-of-conference games. We'll talk about the overall records of the conferences here in a second, but they got some massive wins this weekend. Got a win over all but one of the Power 4 conferences. Massive in a moment where there's going to be an argument at the end of the season. We'll talk about that here in a second. The ACC did not do well this weekend. It is a very weird conference, a very not all that deep conference, if I'm being totally honest, but Clemson struggled really poorly. Obviously, Duke gets just boat raced by Illinois. SMU falls late to Baylor. Vandy just rolls over Virginia Tech. Boston College lost on the road to Michigan State. Syracuse almost fell. It was not all that pretty. Miami and Florida State looked the part. They got their comfortable wins. They went on about their business. I think Clemson is going to be okay, if I'm being totally honest, but the reality is this conference needs margins. This conference, the Big 12, they need to find a way to win the margins, win early season performances, play a little bit cleaner, and they haven't been able to do that. And you're in a position where now, if you're curious, the Power 4 schedules against other Power 4 opponents. The Power 4 conferences right now, the SEC is 8-2 against other Power 4 conferences. The Big 10 is 5-3. The Big 12 is 5-6, and the ACC is 3-9. There is very obviously a hierarchy there. Now, the ACC has gotten a couple of big-time wins over the Big 12, which helps them out a ton, but you're in a position where you didn't do enough in these first couple of weeks to put yourself in a great position moving forward. You better hope that Miami and Florida State and Clemson, they all find their footing, they all play great football the rest of the way, and you maybe have 2 11-1 teams going to Charlotte. If you don't, then you're in a position where maybe you do get one team in, and maybe you're in a position where you're getting boxed out for a 4th SEC team, and a lot of people will be very mad. Let's just be totally honest. Obviously, quite a bit of time to go. Obviously, a number of things that will happen over the next couple of weeks, but not the start that the ACC wanted in the out-of-conference play. Tennessee fans are having about as much fun as anyone in the entire country right about now. I don't want to say they lucked into the best quarterback they could have found, but sort of stumbled into it might have been the better way to put it. Now, someone else did the stumbling in this case, but Nico continues to struggle over there in LA. You got a kid in Joey Aguilar that is everything that this team needs in so many different ways, both on and off the field. He is the leader that I think this team needs at the quarterback position. He's also the guy that is going to let the ball rip. You saw it this past weekend. You saw it against Syracuse. He is not going to let an open receiver go without throwing that football. He might not hit it every single time. Now, he's been really good through 2 weeks, so Tennessee fans might not want to hear that. He's going to miss a couple of big-time passes. He probably will miss a couple of them this Saturday against Georgia. The reality is he's not going to let him go by the wayside. That's kind of what Nico did last season. There were a couple of passes where you're thinking, just rip the ball. Just throw the ball. You have the talent. You have the arm ability. Just throw the football, and he didn't. Joey Aguilar's throwing the football, and very, very aggressively in this game. You got Georgia coming up this weekend. The first 2 weeks were fun. The offense is clicking. Everything is rolling. You want to win this game. I think you've lost 8 straight to Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. You want to find a way to win this game. What I can tell you is that atmosphere is going to be about as good as you're going to find across the country this entirety of the year. A special place up there in Neyland. Have not gone yet. Very badly want to go. But you're in a position where you win that football game, everything is taking off for you. You can enjoy the downfall over there in LA. I'm not saying you can't. I wouldn't necessarily encourage it. I don't necessarily love hate watching, quote unquote, but I'm not going to take away that power from Tennessee fans. You had a very weird offseason. You had a time when you felt really weird about the quarterback situation. Now you feel really good about what happened this past offseason. You saved a little bit of money. You saved a little bit of pride in a lot of respects. And you got a quarterback that's doing some incredible things for your football team. The loser is team with layups, quote unquote layups, I should say. Several teams did not play their best football, got easy wins. Let's just be totally honest. It is not always going to be pretty early in the season, but it wasn't all that pretty. Georgia looked very iffy against Austin Peay. Texas looked okay, is probably the best way to put it, against San Jose State. LSU did not look great against Louisiana Tech, and much more. Now, it should be said, a lot of these were bad weather. It was raining pretty much the entirety of the Texas game. Georgia had a delay during theirs. LSU had a pretty gross setup. A number of teams had not the best playing surface. Let's just put it at that. And there is something that should be said. In these early matchups where you have a Georgia team that struggles against Austin Peay, or in 2022 struggles against Samford. That's to be expected in some respect, especially if there's bad weather. You are going to tighten down the hatches. You're going to say, we're going to run the football to a win, and that's going to be that. That's the reality of that situation. It should have been the reality for Florida, but that's a totally different conversation. You're in a position where you got to find a way to get a win. I know it wasn't pretty. I know there's a number of fan bases that are worried about their teams after a great Week 1 performance. They look terrible, or for Texas, didn't look great in Week 1, didn't quite fix it in Week 2. You got to win, and you move forward, and you continue to build these things. Everyone's going to have a layup that doesn't go their way. As long as you're not Florida, as long as you do not fall to the fate of the Gators, you're in a good position moving forward, and you're in a position where, frankly, you should be happy that you didn't get South Florida, because if Georgia plays that level of football against South Florida, maybe we're having a different conversation. But you get the win, you move forward. Just to remind everyone that these layups aren't necessarily layups, and also, if you don't necessarily dominate these teams, not the worst thing in the world. Samford totally, I should say, hung around against Georgia in 2022, and we know what happened the rest of the way for the Bulldogs. The winner is the Mateer Maniacs. I've tried to come up with a name, not my best work. We'll try to workshop that and see what we can come up with the Mateer Fan Club. But there's a dude that had a lot of Heisman bets coming into the season, and a lot of people feel very smart after Saturday night. A very talented player. Absolutely a guy that kind of has Heisman energy. I know that sounds goofy, and it's absolutely something that shouldn't factor into the Heisman conversation. Let's not act like it doesn't. This is a quarterback at Oklahoma that has a little bit of swagger, that has a little bit of, they call him Moxie Mateer. He's a dude. He's going to make a number of big-time plays. He's going to make plays with his legs, going to make plays with his arms, and he's going to be all over national television. They still get Texas. They still get Missouri. They still get Alabama. They still get LSU. They still get a number of big-time games that are going to define their season, and they're in a position where they find a way to go into that Texas game undefeated. They leave there undefeated. You're in a great position moving forward. You can go 3-3 in the back half of that season, and you can make it to the CFP with Mateer at the very center of this thing. I believe he sits at plus 1,000 right now in the Heisman odds. He was plus 2,500 coming into this season. It has gone way up in the first 2 weeks. I don't see it really going anywhere. Now he's got to play great football the rest of the way, but there are a whole lot of people that were holding John Mateer Heisman cards that woke up on Sunday feeling really good about their bet. The loser is anyone that does not trust the CFP committee, because this one's coming down to an argument. I can promise you that right about now. We do not need to see more football. We will see plenty of more football, and it will be plenty more chaotic is probably the perfect word for it. This year is going to be weird. There's going to be a lot of teams that lose games that they're not supposed to. There's going to be teams that look terrible right now and then find their stride and play great football for the last 10 weeks of the season. It is going to come down to an argument. I'm going to tell you that right now. Everyone brace yourself, because there is going to be a 9-3 Oklahoma against an 11-2 ACC champion loser and a Big 12 champion loser at 11-2. There's going to be a conversation between a 10-2 team against an 11-1 team from another conference. There is going to be a lot of angry people. I'm just going to be totally honest. There will probably be 4, maybe 3, maybe 4 teams vying for one spot at the end of this thing. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know how it all plays out. What I can tell you is that last Sunday, where the committee has to make all the decisions, it's going to be really hard to come to those decisions. And there's going to be a couple of people that are going to be really mad at the end of this thing, because I don't know about you guys, but I can't tell if anyone is all that much better than anyone else. It has been really weird, really frustrating football for the vast majority of fan bases out there thus far, and you're in a position where no one's going to separate that much. Every conference race is going to be as tight as can be, except for maybe the Big Ten, weirdly enough, but you're in a position where it's going to come down to margins, and those margins are going to be decided in that CFP committee room. I would count myself in the people that don't fully trust the committee to make the right decisions, if I'm being totally honest, with all due respect to what they do. Don't love the way that we go about this thing, but I'm just going to strap in. Hopefully they'll find a way to make the right decision. It is going to be a very big argument. At the end of the season, I don't know who it's going to be between. I know we're going to have 2 fan bases from 2 different conferences that are making a lot of arguments against each other towards the end of November into early December. The winner is college football fans. The good news about what I just said is it's going to fall into the committee's hands. The 12 or 14 weeks we get leading up to that is going to be absolutely incredible football. It is going to be so much fun to watch what these teams do. There's going to be so many teams that lose week to week. There's going to be an upset just about every week that makes your jaw drop. There's going to be a number of teams that flip the switch and find a way to play really good football. Maybe Texas turns a corner this upcoming weekend. Now, we won't really know that because they're playing UTEP and then Sam Houston. We won't know that until the Florida game and the Oklahoma game, but maybe that does happen. Maybe there are a couple of teams that didn't play great football early on that will play great football. Maybe Mississippi State finds this as a galvanizing point and they go on to beat a couple of teams in the SEC. Probably don't make a CFP run, but at least throw a wrench into the works for the other teams in the CFP. They're in a position where this one's going to get really weird. And it's going to get really weird really fast. It's already gotten very weird, but you're going to be in a position where maybe Georgia Tech beats Clemson this upcoming weekend. Maybe Miami loses to South Florida and everything goes crazy. No one knows which way is up. We just got to sit back and watch this thing unfold. The best thing about this sport is it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be weird. The best thing you can do is just strap in, sit back, watch it unfold, and then hope your team finds a way to the top. Now, if you're not a fan of a team, I don't know how many college football fans are out there that aren't a fan of a specific team. If you're not, I wouldn't pick one right now. I think it's going to be a very weird season. I think you're going to be able to enjoy the sport as a whole and then maybe pick a team this offseason. But just enjoy this. It is going to be weird. Your team probably is going to be a casualty of the season at some point. The cream will rise to the top, and we'll see what happens at the end of this thing. It is going to be really fun. It is going to be a crazy season. It's already started that way. It is going to continue in a big way, and we just get to enjoy it. Just sit back on your couch and hope that your team is not a massive casualty over the next couple of months. But it's it was a special weekend, and a weekend where a lot of people told me it was not going to be special. That's always the case in college football. You can never take a weekend off. This upcoming weekend is going to be really, really fun as well. We have some great SEC matchups that we'll talk about on Wednesday. It's going to be really fun. Down the stretch of this season, we're going to have some incredible games. We're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have teams come out of nowhere. We're going to have teams that look terrible right now that play great football down the stretch. It is going to be really fun, and you're just going to have to sit back, enjoy it all. We will get into week 3 on Wednesday. We'll give all our picks then. It was an incredible week 2. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, comment, do all of that great stuff. Means the world to me. Absolutely helps out a ton, but we'll talk about week 3 on Wednesday. It's going to be a crazy one. Week 2 gave us plenty. Hopefully week 3 will give us plenty more, but we'll talk about it all on Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you then.